voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So there is a lot of attention right now on Epstein and these massive international alphabet agency, corrupt government, sex trafficking, and blackmail rings. And of course, we need to be shining the light on those operations and exposing them. But the problem is that it's all too easy to focus on DC, to focus on what the CIA is doing or the corruption of the Mossad or any number of these things, while not being aware of the corruption and these same operations that are happening in our very backyards. And so my guest today, my good friend Leigh Dundas, who is a human rights attorney and someone who has dedicated her life to fighting human trafficking rings in some of the darkest and most dangerous places on earth. We're talking the child brothels over in Southeast Asia and a number of places. Well, right now she's heavily involved in a case right here in America. And the frightening thing about this, and what you'll see her tell us in today's interview, is that these same trafficking rings, these blackmail operations, the corrupt judges, the corrupt police officers and officials, this is happening in small town America. This is happening in places where you would never imagine it to be happening. It's happening right in front of us, right under our noses. And so what Lee's going to be detailing today is explaining to us how these massive blackmail operations and sex trafficking rings are operating in our very communities across the country of America. And she has a very specific case that she's focusing on right now, which is an absolutely tragic case of a little girl that from 17 months up to 4 years old was heavily abused by a father that just so happened to be a high-ranking police officer. And when you hear the story of this and when you see all of the different people, the judges, the prosecutors, the counselors that actually have prevented this girl from having any justice and kept putting her back into the arms of the evil, it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. But there's also hope, because what you understand and what I've understood is that the power still lies in us. And I've been so grateful to have you as my audience, and you are someone that every show that you see, you're telling me about it, you're sharing it with your friends and family, and it's so important. And so I really hope that if this interview touches you, that you can help get this to more people, because that's how we have to fight. We fight through our voices and the collective voices we have together to stop these absolutely evil injustices from happening in our country. Before we jump into the show, I want to remind you that every show that I do is also done as a podcast. So maybe you're watching me on Rumble or YouTube or Facebook or wherever it is, but just know that every single episode is also on podcast. So whether you use Spotify or Podbean or Apple Podcasts, just search for Man in America and subscribe on there. That way you can listen to the show while you're doing dishes or mowing your lawn or whatever it is that you're doing. So please enjoy this interview with Leigh Dundas. Leigh, it is such a pleasure to have you back on the show, and I'm sure we'll have some tears this episode, as we typically do in our conversations, but thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me, Seth. It is really an honor and a pleasure as always to be here. And yeah, I think we're going to have an adventure this show. We've got some crazy topics to talk about, but they're important ones. So
They are, and it's interesting tracking the societal understanding and the acceptance and learning about sex trafficking and child sex trafficking. 10 years ago, this was a topic that was rarely discussed in the public space. And I think a lot of people didn't understand what it even was. And you'd see these posters somewhere saying that, there's more sex slaves on earth now than there ever have been. And it's like, what does that even mean? But fast forward to now, actually, your audio cut off. I think maybe you didn't unmute it.
can you hear me?
Yep, there we go, perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
so, fast forward to now, and you've got, Epstein is now something you regularly see on the mainstream news. We had The Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel that was a blockbuster hit, and so there's a lot of discussion about, but also I find that a lot of the discussion is focused on the big picture, on, okay, which politician or which celebrity A-list Hollywood star is complicit, or who is going to, riding Lolita Express to, Little St. James or whatever the island was with Epstein. But I think that actually the much more important part of this is how these operations exist in our local communities and the threat that our children have, because I would never let my children go visit some island with some billionaire. However,
Right.
how do I know that the local gymnastics coach or the local police officer even isn't involved in this? I know that's where your fight has really been is on the ground at the local level. And so I'd love to have you just help educate us about how these networks operate and how this stuff is existing right in our own communities.
Yeah, thanks so much again for giving me a platform because I can't think of a more important topic, especially for those of us like you, like me, who are parents. But these things can happen in the blink of an eye. Just taking the act of child sexual abuse, whether it's remunerated or not, to a pimp or a trafficker that moves it from child rape or child sexual assault into the context of sex trafficking, as we, say nowadays. Just the action of violating a child sexually can go on so darn quickly. Like, you don't think about it because if you're a normal person, your mind would never sort of wander off in this direction, unless maybe you'd watched some sort of scary movie. But it can be as simple as taking your kid to a family reunion at a lake, at a beach, and having the creepy, great uncle by, three degrees removed from the family, sit down next to your kid on the picnic blanket, throw a beach towel, over you and him and you in the kid's lap next to you, get some grapes out, share the grapes, and literally with one hand be sneaking under the towel and groping your child in their nether regions. And you would think, oh my gosh, nobody would have the nerve to do something like that. But not only do they have the nerve to sexually abuse kids, oftentimes even in front of their parents. I mean, if you look at the gymnastics, Simone Biles and all that whole thing with Larry Nasser, a lot of, if you go into the testimony in those types of cases, especially doctor cases, a lot of times the parents are in the room and they're standing behind a curtain, or the doctor puts up something between the kid's ankles and the head of the bed, and the parents on the other side, and the doctor's got his hands where, doing what. And it can take all of 5 or 10 seconds, and it sort of adds to the trauma for the kid if the kid is sitting there going, I'm in public and this is happening, or I'm sitting here with other people and this is happening. And yet it can really go just that quick. And it makes it a very complex equation when you want to be the good parent and let your kid go spend the night at a Girl Scout sleepover or a camping jamboree, or go down the block to their new best friend's house, but you really don't know who that dad is. And I say dad because 90+% of the time, it's men who are sexually abusing. You have no idea. And we like to reassure ourselves with the fact that, oh well, the dad's an accountant or an architect or a podcaster or a lawyer like Leigh Dundas or Seth, or a policeman or a judge or something. Doesn't mean they're not sex abusers. Does not mean they're not sex abusers. And when you look at the rate of sexual abuse in our society, more than half of adult women have experienced some sort of unwanted sexual physical contact in their lifetime. And 1 in 4 have experienced a completed rape or an almost completed rape. So, it's an interesting sort of math equation to run. And I'm not particularly good at math, but most people can do the kind of math I can. Next time you're at, your kid's PTA meeting, or you're in church, or you're at the fair and sitting on bleachers watching a cowboy clown in a rodeo, start counting heads. One, two, three, four, 1, 2, 3, 4, one. And for men, I think it's something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 7, but it's heavily underreported. So, sexual victimization in our society is unfortunately really an epidemic. It's an epidemic. And then when you pay somebody for the privilege of raping or sexually assaulting a child, the person receiving the money is now known as a sex trafficker or a pimp. And many times, not many, but a not insignificant number of times, that can be a family member of the victimized girl. So you could literally be paying the dad for the right to rape his daughter, or the mom because she needs drugs and she wants to go get her crack money, and she will let her child be victimized to support her drug habit. So it's not always the stranger in the trench coat grabbing kids coming out of 5th grade and throwing them in a panel van that's going to be the one sexually abusing your child. And we talk a lot about stranger danger. We would do ourselves a really good service if we quit talking about stranger danger all the time and actually started talking about, it could be great Uncle Paul, or it could be your gymnastics coach, or it could be a slumber party you're at in third grade. And one of the guys in the house, the dad, the brother, the uncle, comes over and starts massaging your back and you feel uncomfortable. You know what? That's a time to go to the bathroom, take your cell phone in there, call mom and say, you're not feeling well, come pick me up. And you can also work out a code with your kids. And lots of parents are now doing this, which is, the kids don't want to be looking like they're bowing out of an event for any reason. Teens don't want to bow out at an event that has drugs because they don't want to be ostracized and look like they're not cool or they're narking. Third graders don't want to call their mom and go, hey, there's a dude here who's giving me creeper vibes. So you can literally just work out a vibe like, oh, I'm sick. And the mom knows not to question it. Oh, is it your tonsils? Nope, just come get your kid. Or, oh, and they use some word, the word blue or the word pink, and suddenly the mom shows up at the doorstep going, hey, there was a family emergency. I need to get little Jane, and the kid is now, her reputation's intact, but she's also removed from the scene that is potentially a really bad scene. And we need to have these conversations, Seth, way younger than we think we do. By the time your kid might originate it to you in high school, you're closing the barn door after the horse is 5 miles down the road. Like, they need to be alert, and you can do it in an age appropriate way. And I like to tell the story when I first started doing the work fighting sex slavery, and I had just started to get a job working as general counsel for an anti-sex slavery nonprofit. We were actually in Southeast Asia. And my husband and daughter and I got on a Cambodian or a Laotian airplane where the seats are like this big. I know we think the seats are tiny in America airplanes, but go get on a Southeast Asian local airliner and they make them for 4'11", tiny 82-pound Asian women. So, my husband and I are like sitting in the seats like this, and, my daughter's in between us. And I guess I thought I had been very circumspect with my conversations, but kids have big ears and I have a big mouth. So probably that wasn't as circumspect as I thought. And my daughter's between me. It's me, my daughter, and my husband's got the aisle seat. And she goes, Mama. And I'm like, yeah, she's 8 at the time. What is child sex trafficking? And I'm like, oh, shoot. Right. And my husband's like, and he's making the whole like hand sign, like, this one's on you, babe. I didn't start this party and I ain't going to finish it for you. Right. I'm like, yeah, thanks, hon, for the support. And I like to think I'm quick on my feet as a, debating kind of lawyer kind of gal. And there's cotton wool in my head. I have no good answer. And finally, I decide I'm going to give my child the labor trafficking definition, because we barely had the birds and the bees conversation at this point. She's 8, right? And I say, well, honey, when we wear our Nike t-shirts or our Nike shoes, or we buy stuff that, the yo-yo or whatever at the market, or we use our cell phones, a lot of the component parts in these products we use, or the item as a whole, the t-shirt, the shoe, are made in factories in places like countries we're going to right now, Asia, China, Cambodia, whatever, India. And a lot of times they use child labor. So in America, you can't really work until you're 16 and up usually, but in these other places, they don't have those types of laws. And you get kids who are stolen from their families and they're worked as slaves, and they may be your age, babe, or younger. They could be 3, 4, 5 years old working in a mine somewhere in Africa to mine the metals that are in our cell phone, or in a cocoa field to make the chocolate and the coffee, or, in a Nike factory somewhere or something like that. And I think, Seth, to myself, in my head, this is what I'm doing. Like, I've dodged a bullet, right? I've given her the labor trafficking definition and sort of sidestepped the whole child sex trafficking. And my very astute 8-year-old, apple didn't fall far from the brain tree of my husband and I, goes, and there's about a 20-second pause. She goes, so how does the sex part factor in? And I was like, and now my husband is now doubled over in the aisle, falling out of his seat. You could have heard a pin drop on Cambodian or Laotian Airlines or whatever the heck we were on. I mean, like, none of the people speak English, but they speak that word. They're like, what is this conversation in aisle 18 about sex slavery? And I am 18 shades of the purple and rust and red flag that are behind you in your studio right now, Seth. And I finally, do the every parent opt out, which I pride myself on never doing, which is, hey, babe, we'll talk about this later when we're not on an airplane. Okay. And, and my kid remains quiet for another 20 seconds. And then she goes, Mama. And I'm like, oh God, help me now. Help me. And she goes, is it like a forced date?
Gold has surged 46% in less than a year, doubling the gains of the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. But this isn't just another rally. Global reserves are shifting, exposing cracks in the monetary system. Investors are losing confidence in paper gold and demanding physical metal, creating a massive gap between gold owed and gold available. But this isn't about how institutions broke another system. It's about how you can profit from it. Right now, Noble Gold Investments has a limited supply of investment-grade gold bars and coins available. As banks scramble to fulfill their obligations, pushing gold prices higher, you can profit. Smart investors are already moving into physical gold. Noble Gold Investments makes it easy for you to do the same. And right now, when you make a qualified investment, Noble Gold will add a free 10th ounce gold coin to your order. Don't wait until it's too late. Visit goldwithseth.com or call 626-654-1906 now and turn their panic into your profit. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or 626-654-1906. You'll find that information in the description for the show as well.
She figured it out on her own. And I said, yeah, babe, that's exactly what it is. Because at age 8, as you know, having, a 1-year-old and a 4 or 5-year-old, at that point, boys have cooties, girls have cooties. They don't want to really be dating. It's not cool yet. And you would never want to go on a forced date. Now, I'm not having to get into what happens at the back end of a brothel or a Motel 6 in America. Like, I'm not giving my kid so much data. She's going to have nightmares and I'm going to need therapy at the other end to get her out of this. But I've given her enough of a flavor to know this is not something you want to be a part of or any of your friends. And that if somebody is forcing you to go on a date, you should tell mama, right? So you can actually start tilling the soil at a very, very early age and getting children age appropriate amounts of information. But if you're waiting until 10th grade to talk to your daughter about pimping and trafficking, you've waited way too long. You need to be starting those conversations early junior high, because that's where a lot of these kids are tricked out, and they'll send Johnny Depp looking really young 20, 25-year-old men into these schools pretending to be high school guys or even younger junior high guys. And they will start dating your daughter and they will be kind and they will be prompt and polite and take her on a date. And that's Romeo pimping. 4 months into it, they're like, hey, babe, will you get with my friend? Because I have a debt I can't pay off. And he said he'd erase the debt if you get with him. And the girl is like, no, baby, I'm in love with you. What are you talking about? But he wears her down and wears her down. And finally, she's like, fine, just one time. And unbeknownst to her, when she's getting with his friend, they're videotaping the whole thing. And the next day he goes, okay, I'm dropping you off at 10 for curfew. Come back out your window at midnight, get in my car. I'm going to sell you to 10 of my friends. And she's like, the hell you are. And he's like, yeah, you're going to do that, bitch. Because if you don't, I'm going to take these naked photos from last night with my buddy and I'm going to send them to your entire church. Your daddy, your daddy's a minister. I'm going to send him to his whole pastor and flock and congregation. And I'm going to send them all around high school. And that is called what the FBI has coined as sextortion. So your kids need to understand how this works so they can spot it coming a mile off and avoid it for themselves, and also recognize the signs in their friends and help keep their friends safe.
My goodness, even the term sextortion is just wild. But where my mind goes in hearing this, I'm thinking, again, we have this Hollywood, this mainstream idea of these elite black ring circles, and you have the Diddy parties and everything. Yet you mentioned the Motel 6, the local high school. And so, you're very aware of not just the actions and how they operate, but also what the criminal networks behind this look like. And when we look at it's easy to look at, say, Congress is voting on something or a certain judge rules a certain way. And you think, why would that person do that? Like, there's no way that, it's so against the Constitution. It doesn't make any sense. But if they're being blackmailed for some reason, or if their child is being extorted or something like that, I'm not saying they don't have a choice, but it's a choice that would be very difficult for any of us to make, and to still think, I'll do the right
Yeah.
thing, right? And
Oh,
so
yeah.
in just say average America, small medium town America, how prevalent are these criminal circles and these gangs and these networks, and how common
Very.
is blackmail used, right? So it's easy, again, looking at like a federal judge and saying, oh, maybe they've been on, Lolita Express, right? But what about, say you live in a small town that has 20,000 people, and what about the local county judge? Are these same blackmail operations happening on the local level as well, and what do they look like?
Yes, they are. And more to the point, yes, they're able to happen because a lot of our elected officials and our pillars of the community don't have clean hands. Maybe they do now, but maybe they didn't in the past, or maybe they've never had clean hands. And you've got to recognize when my husband and I first saw that website that allows you to put in your address to see how many sex offenders are living around you, we dumped our address in. We live in a nice enough neighborhood, but about 15 miles away is a major freeway, and on the other side is a not so nice area. And we put our address in, and it looks like a neon, nuclear explosion on the other side of the freeway. There's sex offenders living everywhere on the other side of the freeway. And then you cross onto our side, and it's fewer and further between. You get up into the hills, there's zero. There's no purple dots, which means you're a baby rapist, basically, a violent baby rapist or a serial rapist. There's no orange dots, which means, well, maybe you got caught for stat rape because you're 19 dating a 17-year-old and the girl's parents freaked out. Probably not a real big threat to the community, so you've got a less exciting color with your sex offender registry. But there's just no dots of any color. And my husband looks at the computer. He was standing right here. This was 20 years ago. And he goes, oh, I guess there's no sex offenders in our neighborhood. That's awesome. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. That's not what that means. That just means that everybody living up here are cops and lawyers and prosecutors and judges, and we don't arrest ourselves for these crimes. That's what that means. So if you Google right now, I literally had somebody send me 2 days ago, Seth, Utah judge arrested for possession of child pornography or something like that, or child sexual abusive material. And this is, to your question of what about the local yokel level, this is not a Supreme Court justice. This is a local judge in Utah. He'd been a judge for a while. And yeah, there he is. And he looks like a nice guy. You look at his face, he's smiling. What's to fear here? And he's somewhere in the sticks of Utah, and he was arrested on, looks like it says there, 8 counts of aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor, which is a first-degree felony. On January 27th, he was arrested at his home. Another sitting judge also arrested for enticing a minor with first-degree felony sexual activity, and 2 counts of dealing in materials harmful to a minor. That's probably sending or receiving photos that you shouldn't have on your computers. So you can sort of see the issues that we're dealing with, and that's the tip of the iceberg. The amount of guys who are actually caught with their hand in that particular cookie jar, probably single digits compared to what's actually going on. And fascinatingly enough, if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of transition into talking to your folks about a case that's taken up a lot of my time in the last 8 weeks, if you don't mind, Seth.
No, please. It's actually great because it's very easy to look at the big picture without looking into the details, and sometimes looking at the specifics of a certain case can be the most important thing to understanding the bigger picture that's happening, and kind of going from the micro to the macro. So yeah, please walk us through what you're currently involved with.
Yeah, I agree with you. You can spit stats and figures at people all day long, and if it doesn't, our brains are wired to learn by way of stories, probably because we spent so many millennia sitting around campfires, and that was the primary way of, culturally encoding one's institutional history. So, yeah, we like to sit around fires. Our brains go into happy, like little waves when we look at, oranges and reds and fire and campfire, and we learn by stories. So, and certainly I do. I'm a story learner and I'm a storyteller for that reason. So, I got a story for you. I'm minding my own business a while ago now, and a concerned citizen, as so many concerned citizens do, brings to my attention this case. And there was a mom and a dad in Michigan, and they had a little girl. And when she was 17 months old, they got divorced. And at that point, they did what a lot of folks did. The dad wasn't really into being a dad. He'd already fathered another kid and sort of abandoned, as I understand it, that other kid. And but the mom didn't want that to happen to her daughter, so she was really working to keep the father-daughter relationship intact and not have him just wander off and marry his mistress, which is in fact what he ended up doing. And he's a policeman, but she's really cultivating this relationship, trying to keep it there. So from 17 months old until age 4.5, the father will come into town, and he's no longer living with the mom. So he picks his toddler up from the ex-wife's house and takes his kid to his mom's house, the paternal grandmother. Fascinatingly enough, though, the paternal grandmother was married to a convicted sex offender at the time, still is. And the old guy, the paternal step grandfather, was on the sex offender registry in Michigan for having admitted to detectives to a 2-year crime spree of raping a wheelchair bound, handicapped, brain injured physical therapy patient of his because she made the cardinal mistake and sin of wearing short shorts to her physical therapy appointment, which, by the way, is pretty standard in the summertime in hotter climates that are muggy, Michigan, and when you're wheelchair bound, because the physical therapist needs to grab your legs and move them to keep the muscle tone up. And, if you're wearing jeans, that doesn't work so well. So she wears short shorts. He becomes aroused. This is direct quotes from his confession to the detectives. And as a result, was inspired to put his penis into the child's vagina. And he didn't last long because he was aroused, and he had an orgasm, after which he pulled his penis out and wiped up the sperm with a hanky, direct quotes. So we know without a shadow of a doubt this guy actually did what he was accused of, because that was me quoting the detectives, quoting his confession to the detectives about raping for 2 years orally and vaginally this brain injured, wheelchair bound teenager. So, not surprisingly, this charmer ends up on the sex offender registry, where normally, if you're on the sex offender registry in any state, you are put on the registry so that people like your listeners and you and me, Seth, can spot these cats a mile away and keep our kids the hell away from the sex offender. And most of the time, policemen, because we're going to call the girl I'm talking about today little Amy, the 4-year-old girl who disclosed sexual abuse to her mother that was perpetrated by her biological father, who was a policeman. Little Amy's dad, being a policeman, normally you would think, well, he's trained in this stuff. He's going to keep all the kids away from sex offenders, most especially his own biological child. No, no. Every other weekend, he comes into town, takes little Amy from mom's house, goes to his mom's house, is married to this charming sex offender, and they go down into the sex offender's basement, which the sex offender has tricked out like an FAO Schwartz toy room, or like Toys R Us meets FAO Schwartz. You've got little chalkboards, little dollies, little Holly Hobby bakey ovens, little, like, I think before the episode, Seth, what did you say? Like, oh, this looks just like my kid's room, right? You've got a 4-year-old daughter?
Yeah, I've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and they share a
Right,
room, and it's, got pink walls and a pink Pottery Barn
right.
rug and, white spindle bed, and they've got,
Yeah,
stuffed animals everywhere and books on the wall, and that's
right.
it that's it, right? Like, what kid
Right.
wouldn't love an environment like that?
Right. And so your daughter's room looks a lot like this. My daughter's room did back in the day. She's now 20, but it still kind of looks like this. There's a lot of pink and white. And yet, if you're a sex offender, most of the time, the way it works is you're not allowed to have rooms that look like this, because we know what sex offenders do in rooms like these, right? So once you're on the registry, you're not supposed to have rooms. Thanks. That's a much more high tech way of doing it there, Seth. But you're not supposed to be within so many yards or miles of dollies and kids' toys and kids' clothing and children themselves. And yet, this is what the sex offender's basement looks like. And what the girl says to the mother is, hey, basically, daddy, policeman daddy, and step grandpa take me down here every 2 weeks when daddy takes me over to grandma's house, and they've been taking turns sexually abusing me. So warrants issue, and they go in, Michigan State Police does, and they find 6 different fluid stains. And you were zeroed in on one right there. And they throw down some evidence markers, and they go, look, these are coming up hot, suspicious for seminal fluid. We're going to cut the carpet out here. And in the upper photos, you can actually see the missing pieces of carpet where they excised the carpet. The carpet goes off to the Michigan State Forensic Police Lab, and it comes back. I think I even put the lab report up there as well, Seth. Comes back a couple weeks later, and you can see it right there at the bottom if you keep cruising down a little bit. 160 septillion times more likely, if it, meaning the seminal fluid stain on the floor there, if it originated from the father, they used his real name, but I've blacked it out. If it originated from the girl's father, than if it originated from any other unrelated unknown contributors. So I had to look up 160 septillion. I figured it was 7 zeros. It ain't. It is 24 zeros after the 160. And the grandpa, the fluid stain that was related to the step grandfather, there's the step grandfather grandfather's sex offender registry. What the lab said about that was it was 320 quadrillion times more likely. And some of the other seminal fluid stains came back 6.1 quadrillion, billions, 15 trillion. I mean, these are really big numbers. And even a 5-year-old could tell you that's a really big number. So I was briefly at the LA DA's office back in the early 90s where I prosecuted felony trials. And people are often, asking me like, hey, is it really like you see on a Hollywood TV movie or, when you go to the box office, like what's it really like when you're, in the lunchroom having conversations with other prosecutors? And what I can tell you, even though I wasn't there that long, is this: when you walk into the lunchroom in the morning and you go, yeah, man, I got the lab report back on that child sex abuse case that I'm taking to trial this week. And the other prosecutors are standing around. They go, yeah, what were the findings? And they go, yeah, it's 160 septillion times more likely that it was so-and-so's seminal fluid than anybody else on the planet. Everybody in the lunchroom goes, yeah, buddy, you're going to win that one. See you later. I mean, you could have a jury full of baboons and you could win that case. So at that point, they issue arrest warrants based on the strength of the forensics of what was found in the sex offender's basement, where the little girl Amy had alleged that the dad and the grandpa were sexually abusing her. And grandpa's taken down in Michigan because he's still living up there, but daddy is now in Jacksonville, Florida. So it's Jacksonville sheriffs that take daddy down, and pursuant to the warrant, they strip him of his devices. And when they strip him of his devices, they send DeSantis extradites dad back to Michigan because they were just executing on Michigan's warrants. So they send the alleged criminal back to Michigan along with all of his electronics that they took from him. And 2 different law enforcement officers start going through the electronics. And what do they find but more than 10,000 images? And they're just starting to scratch the surface. And they have already found, and I quote, naked pictures of both boys and girls that appeared to be possibly prepubescent. That was one of the quotes from one of the law enforcement officers. And another law enforcement officer in 2023, in a deposition under oath, testified they saw pictures of, quote, very young children involved in sexual acts with adults and very young children appearing to be tortured and or held in bondage. So that's also what we like to say is a pretty open and shut case. You got those kind of photos, particularly when you're a cop. Now, mind you, at the time Jacksonville sheriffs took daddy down, he wasn't just any cop. He was working for a major metropolitan police department in Florida as a school police officer. So I don't know how it works for school police officers in Florida, but I can tell you how it works in California. You have unmitigated power. You're a police officer on campus. You're walking around in uniform. You're a big man on campus. You're allowed to stop kids with no real probable cause and be like, hey, what's in that plastic baggie? You are supposed to go in. You are supposed to go into the bathrooms because we all know that's where kids get high. That's where kids beat up other kids. So those cops are usually allowed to go inside at least the same-sex bathroom. Who knows, probably both sexes in retarded states like mine now. But minimally, if you got a male cop, they're allowed to go into the male kid bathrooms and look around in there and make sure kids aren't beating the heck out of somebody or snorting coke or whatever. It scares me to think about what kind of access this biological father of this child may have had in his 5-6 year, I don't even know how many years he was a school police officer. So they arrest him in the middle of his school policing beat, send him back to Michigan. The judge, during the bail bond hearing where they set bail, literally says, and I quote, quite frankly, in almost 20 years I've been on the bench, I've never denied an individual bond, which is to say she's never failed to set bail for a criminal. They usually, go, oh, bail $1 million. The guy posts $100,000 on a bond and he promises to show up for the trial and he's a free bird until his trial date. And then if they find him guilty, he goes away to prison for however many years. That's how that works. She's like, yeah, in almost 2 decades on the bench, I've never failed to set a bond. But I think if there's any case, this would be the case for the following reasons. And then she goes through the strength of the forensic evidence. So both of these characters, the step grandpa, who's already on the convicted sex offender registry for admitting to raping a wheelchair-bound handicapped child for 2 years. And now he's up for charges on his own 4-year-old step granddaughter, and the biological policeman father go to jail. No bond, no bail. They're in jail for a period of months. And then it gets all kinds of weird stuff. Because one of the male prosecuting attorneys at the state attorney general's office, Dana Nessel's office up in Michigan, who is responsible for this prosecution at this point, is found out to have had a relationship with an adult victim on another sex case. And you're not supposed to fall in love with your rape victims when you're the cop or the prosecutor working the case. That's considered to be unethical. Be that as it may, what that sets in motion is Dana Nessel, the AG, goes, you know what? I'm just going to rinse my hands of pretty much all of this guy's cases. Horrible, horrible result here, because this case was rock solid. You have one rock solid case on the seminal fluid stains, hello, and you have a whole separate standalone case for potential possession of child pornographic images if it pans out that those are actually kids that the cops thought they were looking at on the accused phones and laptops. And she can't be bothered to prosecute any of them. So now these men are set free. They both move back down to Florida. Dad goes right back to being a school police officer in this county for the school district in the county. Then
they just let them go. The prosecutor just says,
yeah,
you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not going to, oh my goodness.
Guess what she also does. Let me take a little detour here. So both of these law enforcement officers, one of whom was the attorney general who was alleged to have had the inappropriate relationship later, but still, the guy's got eyeballs and he knows when he's looking at potential child porn images. I mean, you can cast aspersions on his character and his judgment in the other case, and rightly so. But kiddie porn images are pretty much kiddie porn images, right? Especially if you bother to actually finish the investigation. AG Nessel doesn't let these guys finish the investigation. So it's the male assistant prosecutor that was later accused of unethical conduct and a state trooper who are looking in this guy's phones. And this is what they later testify to. The trooper says, yeah, the devices were dumped by personnel. Some of the image review had been started by myself, and he uses the guy's name, the male prosecutor who worked on it. And then he goes on to say, I was about to document this. That is how close the timeline was. And then the assistant prosecutor's misconduct came to light. And I was quickly advised by, well, I couldn't tell you who it was. But both the AG, so Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, both the Attorney General and the Michigan State Police do not do anything else with this case. Just freeze it. So it stayed frozen for a while. And then I don't know the period of time after, but it came up again because we still had the devices that the images were found on. And then I received guidance. Now, this is the trooper who was looking at images that already had showed, quote, pictures of very young children being sexually assaulted by adults and appearing to be tortured and or held in bondage. So this is the trooper who had already found that kind of stuff in the guy's electronics. And he says, so we still had the devices the images were found on, and I received guidance from our detective command staff to just dispose of it. Like when I say just dispose of it, I don't mean throw it in the trash, but release it back to the suspect. If it's nothing that was going to be charged on and then prosecuted, just release it. Don't even worry about detailing what was in it. So you heard me right. Michigan State Attorney General and the detective command staff at the Michigan State Police order the troopers and the guys working on looking at looks like child porn images. They haven't verified it yet, but it seems to be that. And they said it's not like there's teenagers in here. They said very young children, right? They are ordered to freeze it and then dispose of it by doing what? Handing all this SHIT right back to the accused suspect, a school police officer who was accused of sexually assaulting and penetrating his minor daughter in a sex offender's basement using the queen chess piece and various other things. Yeah. So that's what happens. And now that daddy's a free agent living in Florida, he makes a motion in front of the Alachua County Family Justice Center judges, pulls in the presiding judge, a judge by the name of James P. Nylon, Nilon, to be the judge over his child custody motion because he wants 100% custody of his minor daughter back now. And that judge is about the worst judge I've ever seen in my life. And I'm talking including places like third world banana republics like Cambodia. This judge orders all of Amy's therapists off the case. We're talking associate deans of social work at U of Ann Arbor, Michigan, who are trained in forensic interviewing techniques and child sexual abuse. They're gone. Puts a marriage, family, child counselor, horrible woman by the name of Tracy Stolberg, Stulberg, with no ostensible training in child rape cases that I can tell. She's a marriage and family counselor. Horrible woman, and then gives further orders to the remaining therapists on the case to not let the child talk about the past sexual abuse. So when this child is now going to Tracy Stolberg, Stulberg, she's got a Yelp review that would singe your eyeballs off. The kid tries to talk about the sexual abuse, and this woman goes, no, no, no. Your truth is your father never hurt you. So after a couple of months of North Korean style re-education, Gitmo kind of stuff, this child, I mean, this would spin out a 50-year-old rape survivor to tell them their truth was not their truth and that they were never raped and that they were never hurt. Okay, so this now 9-year-old is like suicidal, and the mom puts 3 motions over a 7-month period in front of Judge James P. Nylon going, I need to get my kid actual therapy because she's now suicidal. There is testimony from the child in front of other therapists that she says, literally, I'm going to the bathroom every night and I'm praying to God to let my mother kill me so I can start a new life. Then she tells this very bad judge, Judge Nylon, on the record herself during a hearing on December 7, 2020, that she's suicidal. She says she, quote, wants to die, and that sometimes, I'm going to read to you from some of her testimony. It is frightening. She was holding her own so good, Seth, in front of this relic from the Dark Ages judge. He says, anything you want to talk about? Tell me. And she goes, yeah, kind of hard to talk about it. And he encourages her then to basically not to talk about it. Well, you don't have to talk about it. I mean, if you want to, you can. I'm happy to hear, but I don't want you to think you have to talk about it. This is after an hour of the judge on the record intentionally misdirecting her every time she tries to talk about her dad's abuse of her to like talking about what she got for Christmas. But this third grader is like a mini Seth Holehouse Leigh Dundas in the making. She keeps pulling the judge's attention back to what she wants to talk about. And she tells the judge after he's like, yeah, it's fine if you don't talk about it. She goes, I get it. Well, one of the things was kind of worried about is seeing him again, because he's trying to reunify this alleged rape victim with her alleged rapist, the biological cop father. And the court goes, okay. And this child says, because he hurt me. And the judge goes, okay, I'm sorry, that happened, has happened. He can't, I mean, it's like 18 different dashes in here from the court reporter transcript. I'm like, you can't even get a single sentence out acknowledging this girl's truth. Look at you, buddy. Look at you. You're just, yeah, you're a piece of work is what you are. So Judge James P. Nylon, presiding judge of the Family Law Courthouse in Alachua County. So there he is, stumbling over his words. And this child with no verbal crutches goes, yeah, he, meaning the father, touched me in my private places, and it felt uncomfortable. The judge then goes, yes, I can see that that was painful for you. What? She goes, yeah. And sometimes he, meaning the father, would make me take off my clothes and he would then videotape me with his cell phone dancing. Okay, I don't know about you, Seth, but I look at that statement and I go, that looks like a statement evincing the probable production of child pornography by a sitting Florida cop to a sitting Florida family law judge. He doesn't take it up. He says, well, I'm certainly sorry. And then he uses the little girl's name. I'm certainly sorry, Amy. I'm calling her Amy. Her name's something else. And she goes, yeah. And then I used to have to go to see Stolberg, the horrible therapist that this judge appointed to her. And when I came home, I wanted to die because it would have been better to die than live and have to go see this therapist that he appointed. And she goes, and then one night I had to see him, the father, in the daytime and at night. And I felt like I couldn't breathe. It felt like all the bad feelings inside of me were squeezing me. And then I started throwing up because I was so scared of him. I'm scared because he acts so nice around other people. But to me, when he's alone with me, he hurts me and it feels uncomfortable. Well, and then the judge cuts her off. And then he goes, well, sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. And she goes, one of the things was that at Dr. Stolberg's, the bad therapist that this judge appointed to her, when I came to see her, she told me, no, no, no. And your truth is that you didn't get hurt. And then this judge feigns ignorance. He doesn't go, well, you just told me you were suicidal from being forced to go to this therapist, and that the reason for that is because she's running roughshod over everything you're trying to say in session. And really, little girl, I'm gonna out myself right now and say I'm sorry. That's all a result of my aberrated, bizarro, Dark Ages decision to tell your therapist to not let you talk about the abuse. No, he doesn't cop to it. Of course not. So she's like, yeah. So this woman overrides me and goes, no, 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 your truth is you didn't get hurt. And the judge feigns shock. He goes, oh, is that what Dr. Stolberg, the therapist, told you? And this kid, man, she is awesome. She goes, yes. And that made me feel like I was worthless because I was trying to say something and she didn't let me say it. And this judge goes, well, I'm so sorry you're feeling this way today, Amy. Like every bad husband. I'm not going to apologize for my actions. I'm so sorry you're feeling upset by what I did. I'm like, really? This is the state of judging in the state of Florida right now in the 2020s. That was December 7th, 2020. Then you know what this a-hole did? And I'm sorry, I am not in the habit as a lawyer of calling judges out this hard. he deserves it. This guy is a pedophile sympathizer, and somebody needs to say it. He sealed the record so that nobody could find out that a 9-year-old in his court under oath had just testified that a sitting Florida school police officer just testified that that police officer would make his own daughter take her clothes off and videotape her with his cell phone dancing, which is the probable manufacture of child pornography. And if he punched buttons on his phone, which he also told the therapist, it is the probable not just production of child pornography, but dissemination, which is a whole separate federal charge that makes you go away even longer to jail.
Are you looking to do something better for your health? Look no further than Kimchi One from Brightcore Nutrition. Kimchi One packs all the fermented nutrition of kimchi in convenient capsules, arming your gut with over 900 unique strains of probiotics supporting gut flora and digestion. I highly recommend this product because all health starts in the gut. So, putting the right fermented superfood in your gut improves every aspect of your health, your skin, your hair, your mental performance, even your beard. Kimchi has even shown to reduce your risk of obesity and promote smaller waistlines. Kimchi One is all natural, made in the USA, and non GMO. Today, you can get an exclusive offer just for my viewers, 25% off with the code Man in America by going to mybrightcore.com/Man in America, or call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call now at 888-575-6488, and their educated staff will make sure that Kimchi One is right for you. Again, that's 888-575-6488 with promo code Man in America.
And then he ordered the therapist, James P. Nylon, the presiding judge, ordered the therapist on the record when they asked if they should report some of this child abuse the child was trying to disclose, notwithstanding a standing order to not let the therapist let the kid talk about it. He says, so what I would say to a doctor on the record about your question about the disclosure that Amy made to you, I would say it's appropriate not to inform the state authorities as a mandated reporter. I'm sorry. Let me tell you something. I'm not a lawyer in Florida, but I do have the ability to research Florida laws. I looked it up, Seth. You know who are mandated reporters in the state of Florida? Therapists. You know who else are mandated reporters? Judges. That sounds suspiciously like, to me, an on the record conspiracy between two mandated reporters to go into an agreement to not report, which is a second-degree felony. Now, I am sure, because I also continued reading the law, that they give judges a pass. If you hear about child abuse as a judge in your daily life, your 9-to-5 judging, and you don't report, there's 18 ways to Sunday why they can give you a pass on that. But my goodness, this is just all kinds of wrong. And then this charming judge on the last day on the bench fines the non-offending parent, the mother, $237,629.21 for having gotten her child therapy and for having cooperated with an ongoing Michigan State Attorney General State Police investigation that yielded the rock solid evidence we've already discussed.
Wow. So I've got so many questions going on for me. I mean, this is insane. This highlights the problem. We see it at the federal level. Like, okay, why are these judges doing this? But it's not just at that level. But so one thing I want to say is, for all of the people that are watching this, we have to share this information, especially if you're someone, if you're watching this and you have connections to attorneys, to other judges, to law enforcement, if you have a direct route to Ron DeSantis, whatever it is, we have to bring light to these situations, for one. Now, digging into this, okay, so what I'm piecing together here in my little investigative report, okay, so we have this child abuse case that existed between 17 months and 4 years old, was this period of time that we now have concrete evidence of abuse taking place. We have concrete evidence of child pornography, large amounts of child pornography on the owned electronic device of the father, who was a relatively higher ranking police officer in Florida. We then, so we have the complicity of, obviously, the father who's involved with it, the step grandfather, but now we have a judge, like a pretty high ranking judge. We have a high ranking prosecutor, AG. We have the therapist involved. So what we're seeing here is that there's a whole network, but it makes me ask the question of, are these people, whether it's the therapist or the judge or the police officer or whoever it is, are they being blackmailed? Does this case reveal something larger? Because I can't make sense of why, even hypothetically, let's just imagine that the judge was a pedophile or a judge. I mean, I'm not going to frame this guy in particular, but let's just say a judge is a pedophile. It doesn't mean that he has to then, allow every pedophile that walks into his courtroom off, with nothing. I mean, he could still, arguably, he could still prosecute pedophiles, and it'd probably be in his best interest to, because no one would suspect him. Like, oh, that guy's really hard on child porn, right? It would make you think that he wasn't. But why would they do this? Do you think that there's blackmail? Are they getting a call from somebody above them that is saying, "Hey, throw this case out"? Like what kind of operation or network is pulling the strings to make this single case so one-sided? I can't comprehend that.
Well, I think you're squarely over target. And there, by the way, there was a Michigan undersheriff by the name of Michael McCabe in Oakland County who made this case go away when he first caught it. Oh, it wouldn't even investigate. It's like, dude, you've got an allegation that a proven child rapist is allowing more child rapes to occur, and he's on the registry as a sex offender in his basement. Don't you think you'd at least go do a drive-by, a little knock-knock, get the sex offender people to come go do a check out the basement? Couldn't be bothered. And then every time this case went to a new law enforcement agency in Michigan, he would pick up the phone and tell them, don't investigate it. And if they didn't back down, he would make an absolute nuisance of himself. 5 different people who didn't back off the case after he called them ended up terminated, resigned, or fired. He went so far as to call the sitting judge who issued the search warrants. I'm telling you, it was one of the women who was fired from her job, reinstated with back pay, is now suing the undersheriff on this case over little Amy's case for obstruction of justice and all sorts of other stuff. There's multiple lawsuits going against the undersheriff. But again, just taking that one guy, which I mean, I could have done a whole separate show on just what this guy did in the context of this case, or more to the point, didn't investigate, and then tried to make everybody else not investigate. Like, why, dude? Why are you keeping a separate folder on this? Why are you retiring and taking that separate file home with you? Why are you admitting that you tried to intimidate other cops off the case? Like, he handwrote notes to himself that said, so-and-so was very nervous on the phone with me when I called them, meaning another police chief. It's like, why are you even trying to make other police chiefs nervous? Like, what is motivating you to spend hundreds, if not thousands, of your own hours and that of your underlings going around and trying to make this case get gone after you failed to investigate it? You got to ask yourself why. Same with the AG. I get that your male prosecutor went and fell in love with a victim on another case. That gives, what on earth are you doing throwing this girl into harm's way and not bothering to prosecute a man, a cop, no less, who's a school police officer, no less, who was caught with 10,000 photos, some of which, when they had barely just started looking in there, already seemed to be apparently probative of child pornography because they were very young kids involved in sexual acts with adults and being tortured and or in bondage. Like, where do you get off ordering the freezing of that investigation? You know what it looks like to me right now, Seth? Especially when I finish the story, because I'm not even done with it yet. It looks like a multi-state conspiracy being spearheaded by the very top people in both states. And I am talking the AG's office in Michigan. And I could be wrong, but there's certainly facts that seem probative of this. The AG's office in Michigan, an undersheriff at the Michigan State Police level, and now we've got multiple family law judges in the Alachua County Courthouse. They're supposed to be family law judges that seem to be batting for the wrong team. And then the involvement of what appears to be the Department of Child and Family in Florida when I get to the end of the saga, because it's not enough that the a-hole judge finds the mother, bankrupts her at the end of December 2020. Then he hand carries the case. He admits, he didn't admit, the judge he gave it to admitted. He gives the case to Judge Robert K. Grobe, Groeb. Now, Grobe is a very interesting cat. He's a judge in Florida, but guess where he was born? He was born up in Michigan. He also used to be the attorney for the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. He also was a state attorney, which is a prosecutor in the state of Florida, before he became a family law judge for 15 years. Very well-connected guy. Judge Grobe catches the case from the presiding judge who did all these aberrated orders. Judge Grobe then admits on August 8th of last year, literally like last summer, right? Not that long ago, he admits that he is 100% in agreement with James P. Nylon, the prior judge, that Judge Nylon gave him the case along with Judge Nylon's impressions of the evidence, that he is not going to allow the alleged child sexual molestation to become a feature of the child custody trial. He's 100%. He literally doubles down on his position, carrying out Heil Hitler, the orders of the preceding judge. He's like, I'm 100% going to agree with them. It's not going to come in at the trial. I'm not going to let it become a feature of this trial. And then the mother's attorney's like, okay, fine. Even though that's basically not in keeping with Florida law, whatever. He's like, can we at least let this girl, who's now almost 14 years old, by the way, Seth, testify at the child custody hearing where the dad's trying to get 100% custody back? And the judge is like, oh, Judge Grove goes, yeah, she's plenty lucid, plenty intelligent. I read the transcript of when Judge Nylon was talking to her, the one I just read you. And he goes, yeah, there's no pregnant pauses. She seemed to understand the difference between a truth and a lie and right and wrong. And the mother's attorney's like, yeah, and that was 4 years ago when she was 9. She's 13 and a half now. And he goes, oh yeah, she's clearly met the threshold for being able intellectually to testify. And then he says, but that doesn't mean I'm going to let her testify at the trial. And you're reading this. I was reading this transcript going, what? And then he admits, he goes, yeah, I've been a sitting family law judge for almost 15 years now. I have had hundreds of attorneys and families requesting that their minor child be allowed to testify in front of me. And he says, I have only allowed it on 2 or 3 occasions. Why? Oh, then he shows his true colors. Because I don't want the children to think that they're the ones, quote, driving the train here. So he bans the child from testifying. Talk about a power-hungry narcissist, pedophile sympathizer, right? Bans the alleged evidence of sexual molestation. We're talking 160 septillion times more likely seminal fluid that came from the dad's penis than anybody else, 320 quadrillion on the grandpa. Bans that evidence, won't let any of the photos come in that they found on the dad's electronics, can't have that, won't even let the kid testify as to which she wants to live with. They have this kid and the mother gag ordered 8 ways to Sunday. They're not allowed to talk about the abuse. They're not allowed to talk about the abuse in therapy. The mother's not allowed to talk to the therapist about the abuse or her child about the abuse. I mean, now the kid's not allowed to testify in court. Like, to your earlier question, why in the hell? Why are they so mother flippin' invested in silencing this one child and mom? And I got to say, this is a very sad case. Happens millions of times every damn day. For every child case I talk about where a kid's being raped by a parent, there's millions more going on. And I don't say that to trivialize little Amy's case or her harm or anybody else's, but there is one hell of a lot of very high level firepower being dropped on from the AG, from the sheriff, from the judge's point of view in multiple states. And you got to ask yourself, why? Then it gets worse. So he orders the child, January 6th and 7th, I am in Florida. I do a little press conference in front of the courthouse because I think the world should know about the evidence that this judge isn't letting be heard inside the courthouse. And he lets the whole dad's case be heard Monday. And then before the mom has a chance to put on her 13 witnesses or whatever and put her case on Tuesday, 9 a.m., the judge summarily denies the cop father's motion for 100% custody. So listen carefully. It's very tricky, very clever what he did. He denied the dad's motion. So technically the mom won that round. She can't appeal as the winner. She cannot appeal. And now, because there's no 100% to dad, it just goes back to 50-50. Unsupervised starting immediately, which means dad now has the right to the kid over President's Day weekend. So mother brings the child into the state of Florida on Friday, Valentine's Day, February 14. DCF, Department of Child and Family, which is Florida CPS, calls her. Hey, we hear you're in the state. We've also apparently had some sort of anonymous report because lots of people are concerned about the kid. And I'm sure the kid was pretty spun out the week prior at school. Some doctor, school teacher, friend, somebody called in an anonymous report. And they're like, you need to bring your kid to the DCF headquarters. Mom's very afraid to not comply, right? She's already been bankrupted for no damn good reason by a Florida family law judge for cooperating with the cops. So far be it from her to not cooperate, right? So so she's like, fine, I'll bring my kid in. They go over to this Department of Child and Family building in a major city. This is 3 weeks ago now. She walks into the building. The kid starts to disclose a little bit to the social worker from DCF. Social worker decides to invite a passing Florida patrolman, a sheriff guy, off the road. This guy is not a detective. He's got no specialized training in child abuse or rape victims. Invites him into the equation in full uniform. Now let's rewind and look at this logically. The child is alleging everybody's innocent until proven guilty too, if I haven't said that. But child is alleging she was raped by her biological father, who is what? A Florida policeman. Who do we have in the room with her now? Alone. A Florida policeman who is the same height, same weight, same race, same sex, same hair color, same eye color, same uniform as her alleged daddy rapist. Triggering much? This is why we don't even have men do interviews. Like typically you're doing a rape victim interview of any age, certainly a child rape victim, somebody who looks like me, 50 years old, warm and fuzzy, goes into a room with a bunch of teddy bears and a couch that's wired invisibly for audio video recording, so you're not missing any of the child's disclosures. Last thing you do when anybody says that they were used in pornography is set up a camera on a tripod, because that is also a trigger, right? No, they don't take her into a room that's wired for these types of disclosures. They don't take her into a warm and fuzzy social worker room. She's in a dusty, dirty, utilitarian file room with dead cockroaches in the corner that nobody even wants to be in as an adult, trying to disclose to her policeman to a policeman in uniform that her daddy policeman raped her. It goes like a lead balloon. The kid manages to get a few sentences out, says something like, if I go to my dad, I'll end up dead, because he had long allegedly threatened to kill her if she disclosed, and she's now disclosed, and he's done a few months in prison in Michigan over it before they let him walk free. So she's like, yeah, if I go back to him unsupervised, I'll end up dead, something like that. And this untrained cop who knows nothing does not hear that as a legitimate statement of fear of homicide, but transmutes it into being, oh, little girl, you're suicidal. I'm going to Baker Act commit you, which is the Florida law that allows for an involuntary 72-hour psych hold in a lockdown, violent juvenile psychiatric hospital facility for 5 days. So all of a sudden, this kid is perp walked. The victim, this is what I've spent 12 years training law enforcement officers to not do. You do not reward child victims, trafficking victims, rape victims about disclosing their abuse by locking them up, involuntarily detaining them, treating them like a criminal, or throwing them in the back of your squad car where the criminals ride and the drunks who are vomiting it with the metal cage and the doors that have no handles. He drags this 13-year-old girl out the back of the DCF building, throws her in the back of his black and white SUV police cruiser, takes her across town, perp walks her in the front door. They have to be buzzed in of a lockdown psych ward, 5 p.m. Friday night, Valentine's. That's her reward. She is locked up with violent, juvenile, psychiatric, crazy kids from 8 years old on who are trying to kill the staff workers and body blowing, kidney punching the staff workers, like when they're in 3rd grade or 6th grade, with 3 other male staff having to rip the kid off the other adult worker who is about to be homicided by the violent child. This is where we have put this sensitive, vulnerable, straight A student, child rape victim who gamely disclosed to a patrolman with no training, which is why you don't do it this way, that she was afraid her daddy was going to kill her. Now she's locked down as her reward over a long holiday weekend for 5 days. They don't let her go until Tuesday at noon. And then DCF, before they've even interviewed the kid, Friday night, Valentine's Day, cherry on top of this whole story, call the alleged rapist father, who's a cop or used to be a cop, and tells him where his minor daughter is. So guess who shows up, Seth, in the middle of the lockdown psych ward lobby the next day, demanding to see his alleged rape victim? Yeah, the dad.
Gosh.
Speechless, I am.
So, gosh, there's so much to take in here.
Right?
I mean, it just seems so backwards. It makes you think, gosh, our society is run by criminals, by this massive criminal network. But
right.
One question that I have, and I think you alluded to this earlier, how common is this? Like how many cases, how many small town, medium towns across America is this network like this? And part of the reason why I asked that, there's a book that you're probably familiar with. It's called Political Ponerology, and it's the study of evil, and it's basically studying how these people that are sociopaths and evil are attracted to positions of power, right?
Yep.
Politicians, police officers,
Yep.
judges, pastors, any position that they can have influence, that there's an unnatural proportion of people that are actually, I think there's roughly, I think they say about 4% of people are what they refer to as being sociopaths. They're actually truly evil. If you read The People of the Lie, a different book, it kind of goes into the makeup. These people aren't like you and I. Like, they literally don't have that thing that we call a conscience. They can kill, they can maim, they can murder, they can hurt a baby. It doesn't matter to them. It's the same thing as, me kind of, I don't know, like, kind of taking a chicken and locking a chicken up. I don't think above it. The chicken needs to go back into the coop. Okay, so looking at all these different positions you've talked about, I mean, I'm guessing that it's not just this particular network of judges and police officers that tie into this particular area. It just makes me wonder, even the judge that was, became, has this decorated career and ended up being a family law judge. It makes me wonder if these people are placed there, that they're intentionally taking these people that are compromised, that have blackmail on them, whatever it is, and they're positioning, they're putting them into these family law judge positions so they can
Yeah.
help protect the system. So,
Yeah.
and what's also amazing with this is that, again, we're not talking about some high level DC international, kind of alphabet agency blackmail sex ring. This is run of the mill stuff
Yeah.
in small to medium town America.
Yep.
So how prevalent is this same story across our country?
Well, I will tell you this thing has far deeper roots than I ever thought, and I can't speak to that yet. I will also tell you that I have been warned off this case. And I mean, I am somebody who was working to gather intel to bust child brothels that were run by the Yakuza Mafia in Asia. So that gives you some
You're a
idea of
tough
my
cookie.
comparisons to. Well, yeah, and I've worked against very high level criminal cartels in the past. And I have never been as directly warned off as I was by people who were connected to some of the players here as I have been on this case. Obviously, it fell flat. Here I am continuing to scream from the rooftops and warning the world about this particular apparent network. I mean, maybe daddy's a solo operator. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever read up on kids who are uniquely gifted with a sixth sense, but they'll do these psychic phenomena tests with we're talking at like Harvard and Yale, and they'll put a stack of cards in front of them and they'll turn the cards over, and they know they're psychic or more gifted at guessing well, however you want to phrase that ability, when they get a higher than statistical probability proportion right. So if you get the even what is the saying, even a broken clock is wrong twice a day. When you're batting more than twice a day, if you and I get 4 out of 50 cards right, and suddenly somebody's getting 40 out of 50 cards right, you're like, okay, clearly they're more gifted in that area than me and Seth. You also know that a kid is uniquely gifted when they get 0 cards right. How do you get 0 cards right when statistics say you should be getting X amount by dumb luck right on average statistically? Well, that kid is psychic, doesn't want to be labeled such, doesn't want to be studied like a lab rat in a lab. And so he is intentionally getting every one wrong, not realizing at age 5 or 8 when he's in this lab that that's as much of a tell as getting every card right. So I look at this case, taking that analogy to this, it's been a 10-year case. The kid disclosed at age 4.5. In a few months, she'll be 14 years old. She's had not a single solitary variable break in her favor except for the execution of the search warrant. And as soon as it started going right, suddenly the AG's case was backing off. They're dismissing a case that was rock solid on the evidence. Like, all right, dude, yeah, so what? One of many, there were multiple prosecutors at the AG's office working this case. Yeah, the guy one did something wrong on a different case. So what? You have 10,000 photos. Finish looking at them and bring the possession of kitty porn CSAM case, child sexual abuse of material case, if it shakes out to be what it looks like it is. Skip the other case if you think it's too much he said, she said, young daughter, a respected cop. You don't want the he said, she said. You don't want the jury to go wrong on that. Just take the one that's super easy for even idiots to come out right on. Even the Supreme Court test is, the Supreme Court test on pornography is Seth, it's we'll know it when we see it. Like even 9 justices couldn't articulate it better than, yeah, you'll know it when you see it when it comes to pornography. So my goodness, like at least trust the jury of 12 with that. But no, she couldn't be bothered. And I look at this and I go, wow, dirty, sorry, not a dirty, and apparently very protective of pedophile undersheriff. Okay, weird. so protective that he feels emboldened to actually phone sitting judges and question/harass, threaten them, or whatever he did on that phone call. And now we've got him calling the AG's office, and suddenly the AG's office drops it. And now she's got family law judges, and two different family law judges, and both of them are super protective of the dad and muzzling the kid and the mother and the therapist. Like, and now we've got DCF, and everybody's like, oh yeah, surely DCF. I mean, that's their damn job, is to keep the kids safe. And instead, they don't file a motion to, like, keep the kid from the dad. They throw her in lockdown. And then they start saying to the mom, we're not even going to get your kid interviewed. We can't tell you when or if an interview is even going to happen, is what they were telling this mom when her kid was in lockdown, when that's the thing they baited the mom and the daughter into their building with in the first place. And I'm like, really? I'm looking at a deck of 50 and we've got 0 cards that anybody could get right. Like, it makes you wonder, to your point. And to your point, the short answer to your question is, it's everywhere. It's places you would not suspect, and it's people you would not believe. And a lot of bad seeds are out there. And even the bad seeds that aren't protected by other bad seeds know how to blackmail. And that's unfortunate. And there's a lot of people who suffer crises of confidence and courage. And even when they know what the right thing is and that they know that they should do it, they don't want to go up against these networks. And that's its own problem. And that's why I'm on your show today, is I am going to give your folks, if they're so willing, homework. You need to call DeSantis and email him. You need to call the Attorney General, who is no longer Ashley Moody in the state, but the acting Attorney General, now that she's a senator, is John Gard. You need to call the woman in charge of the Department of Child and Family and email her. And you need to, if you really want to get A+ on your homework, write a snail mail letter, because they don't take emails, to the Judicial Qualifications Commission in the state of Florida and say, what the heck are you doing with family law judges that are this bad in 2025? This is something you shouldn't have even seen in the 1950s. These guys are relics from the dark ages. They should not be on the bench. They're doing things that are objectively incorrect, ordering people who are mandated reporters to not report, bankrupting mothers for having cooperated with police investigations. They have no business being on the bench. Get them off. If you don't know what to say in your email or letter, print off the page of my website or block and copy it into an email and just circle it with a black Sharpie and say, this is wrong. Stop it. You should do better. You're a red state. And I'm talking to you, DeSantis, Casey DeSantis, Attorney General John Gard, head of DCF. And you do those 4 steps. They're laid out. I think Seth is getting ready to go to my website. They're on the child abuse page. If you click the child abuse tab off the top nav bar there, yep, you go to the very bottom of the child abuse page that has all the stuff I've talked about today. Right above there you go, right above the pictures, you're going to see 4 blue, thank you, Seth, 4 blue numbered paragraphs. Those are the emails you need to send. And if you really have a minute, call them also. I know you have to be on hold. It's a bit of an ask, but they really pay attention when their phones start ringing. It's a different day interrupter than just an email sitting in an inbox. And you also need to stay informed and sign up in that box below, not because I particularly want to grow my audience. There's too many people asking me for help as it is, but because we're probably going to be doing a rally if the state of Florida doesn't get this right in the next week or so. And you're going to need to know how to help us do that rally. Either come to the rally or, watch it online when it's going down. So click there and stay informed by signing up. And that's your homework on child sex abuse. And then the final thing I would say is I don't charge mothers who are already $2 million in the hole to their crazy family law lawyers to get these kinds of results, which are no kind of results. I don't charge them. When we pull 5 and 7-year-old kids out of brothels in Asia, I don't stick my hand out and say to the kindergartner, now pay me for helping rescue you or bringing the Navy SEAL who rescued you. And I do a piss poor job of fundraising myself. And at this point, I've been willing to acknowledge that I'm really good on a microphone and really good at fundraising bad at fundraising for myself. So if you want to support the mom, I'm not taking money from her for legal fees, but there's a donate to the mom tab on the webpage. You can click there. It's the green button, I think, on the top right. And it takes you to a page where you can throw some of your Starbucks money for this week and go off caffeine cold turkey. It'll be a win-win. You'll get a headache, but your body and your adrenals will be happier, and you'll have given your Starbucks money to something that's a lot more important. And then the last thing I would say is the way I do stay in the saddle is my husband and I had a stem cell clinic for many years, and we're doing it again now that the freedom fight is a little bit going right for us. And you can go to the healthy living page of my website and you can learn about stem cells. If you don't know what stem cells are, they're little blank slate cells that have not grown up and picked a career. And when they grow up in your body, on the left side there, that's where you sign up with the blue button to learn about stem cells. When the stem cells grow up, they can make new tissue in your body. If you torn a muscle, they can make new muscle tissue. You blew out a ligament or a tendon, they can knit your tendon back together. If you have no cartilage in your knee because you're old, or you run marathons, or you were a pro NFL player in your youth, you can actually have those stem cells go in and make new cartilage tissue in many cases. And to give you some idea of the efficacy of stem cell, you can Google this article. This is a guy who was paralyzed from the neck down after a surfing incident in San Diego, paralyzed for 7.5 years. This is ABC 7. This is not me and Seth. This is mainstream media on April 2nd of 2024 in this man's backyard. He's a quadriplegic. He was a quadriplegic for 3/4 of a decade. They did stem cell on his spinal cord, and he is now walking around his backyard pool deck, upright, vertical, with not a walker, not a quad cane, a regular cane. Okay, so again, if you've not heard about stem cells, you don't know about them, sign up to learn more. This is a racehorse, blew out its tendon in a race. We're talking the tendon was like in 2 separate pieces. They put the gray shield up to shoot the horse in the head. They're like, that kind of injury is not fixable. And the owners were like, no, 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 don't shoot the little racehorse. He's our joint project from this little cottage town in England. And they're like, all right, fine, we're going to do some stem cell. Maybe it'll help like heal the tendon good enough to get the horse out to pasture and weight bearing again. But he's not going to run a race after that kind of a tendon injury. Well, they were wrong. They did umbilical, I think, stem cell on this little horse's tendon. 1 year later, not only is he weight bearing, he ran a 4.5-mile race with 22 steeple jumps in it, big, tall steeple jumps with a rider on his back. And he didn't just run the race, he won it. So, yeah, things to know.
So on your website, so it's leighdundas.com, which I'll put it into the description of the show. A few things for homework. First off, the tab child abuse case. Go there. On the very bottom above the photos are the instructions in blue, what you can do. Sign up for the email to make sure you stay informed. Top of that page is a green button if you want to go to the Give, Send, Go to support the mother, which she is so deserving of our support. Also, on the Healthy Living tab right here, there's a bunch of information about stem cells. Anything you touch, I trust. You're smart, you're diligent. So I encourage people to go there, fill out the information, learn more about that. And that's another way we can support you, Leigh, and what you're doing.
Yeah, we're doing stem cell injections. This is not the X39 patch, which I've personally tried and also works great. But if you've got serious joint issues, or you're a quadriplegic, or you've got, some sort of autoimmune neurodegen, we do joint injections and IV pushes of umbilically derived stem cell. This is not broken baby body parts. The only state it's actually legal in right now is Utah. FDA tried to make it illegal in the middle of 22, and they did. And Utah told them, you know what, take a hike. We're going to make our own law, giving it the green light as long as the tissue is from umbilical cord or something like that, and not coming from abortions, which of course we are ethical. We use umbilical stuff, and we use unvaccinated product, which is super hard to find now. So yeah, I know a lot of guys are doing stem cell and you can go out of the country, but if you're one of me and Seth's followers, you're probably not super keen on getting vaccinated stem cell when you've stayed away from the vax. So the last thing I would say is they've figured out how to put a hyperbaric chamber in a glass of water. It's called Patriox. We white labeled it for the Patriot crowd. It's Patriot Oxygen Water. And it's basically really high oxygen going into your body by way of you drinking the water. You can buy it on my website. It's the little pink tab. And these are the kinds of things that happen. This is a lady, a 60-year-old, and you see her blood here. It looks like the Hawaiian Islands. That is not healthy blood when it looks like the clumpy, glumpy Hawaiian Island chain. She drinks a glass of the water. 2 minutes later, this is what her blood looked like, which is, if you've got Judy Mikovits on here, she'll tell you that's normal, healthy looking blood. The final thing is, They're bathing people in this water an hour a day in Hungary. There's also one clinic now in America. We're talking autistic kids who for 14 years never spoke a word, speaking a full sentence within a week. We're talking go home and die, pancreatic stage 4, Mets everywhere. It's metastasized everywhere. They bathe the people for a month in this water, hour a day, make them drink it. They're walking out with zero evidence of cancer in their body. FDA and FTC don't let us make claims. I can't tell you that stem cells are going to help you. Everybody's body is different. I can't tell you that the oxygen water is going to help you or your kid or your dad who's got Parkinson's, but I can tell you, everybody knows your body does better with more oxygen. And if you want disease to thrive, put 5 masks on and don't get oxygen in. So this oxygen water is pretty amazing. Last picture I'll show you. This is a woman in Italy. She ran her finger, her thumb, as you can tell, through something like a saw or a blade. It cut off the tip. The University of Italy at Milan was like, wow, that's some nasty stuff. We're going to drench her water or drench her thumb in the water and the gel with the oxygen in it and put the bandage on, hoping that it was going to heal it up quicker. They were just hoping to speed the healing process, much like they do with burn victims when they put them, get them some oxygen. They take the bandage off. That's her thumb. It regrew her freaking thumb. When they started looking at how that happened, they said, wow, it appears that the liquid oxygen in the water reactivated a gene that is normally active when a fetus is in the womb and we're growing limbs. After we're born, we don't need that gene. We already have our limbs and it goes dormant, which is why your third grade teacher said, hey, don't ever cut off your thumb or your arm because we're not starfish. It won't regrow. And that's always been the science since like Galileo and Newton, except now they have a regrown thumb. So again, if you're struggling with any sort of anything, brain fog, some sort of non-optimal health condition, and you don't really like the idea of spending $400 and going into a tiny tube and sitting in the hyperbaric chamber all claustrophobic, just order a case of the water, give it a whirl. And if you've got any sort of bone-on-bone knee or torn rotator cuff and you want to stay alive longer, I'm looking to keep freedom fighters alive, not so much everybody else. But if you're interested in stem cell, go to the Healthy Living page of my website, sign up. We're doing our next step. We go once a month out to my pastor's family member's medical clinic, and we borrow his office because we obviously don't live in Utah. And we do it once a month, and we treat stem cell patients, and it works freaking phenomenally. We had a guy on James Grunvig's show who saw me talk it up in the fall, and he said, I'm literally ready to swallow my gun. We treated him October 5th. He's like, my hip is so bad, I can't ride my Harley. I have a young wife, can't have sex with her, can't get down on the floor with the grandkids to play with them, can't hunt, can't fish. And I'm telling you right now, little lady, life ain't worth living if you can't do the fun stuff. So here's my card. It better work. If it doesn't, I'm just going to go swallow my gun. And I said, I'll take your card. And I'm not worried in the least about taking your card because I've seen it work every damn week since 2016 in my husband's office. And that man, we treated him Saturday. He flew back home to Grand Rapids, Michigan on Sunday morning. And he did his first Harley ride or whatever on his motorcycle with his wife that afternoon. And then we didn't hear from him from like midweek until October 30th, where he called my husband up and said, I have a podcast. This thing is the best thing I've ever done in my life. It was a freaking miracle. And I want to give a testimonial to let everybody else know if they're suffering, they don't need to. And this is ridiculous that the FDA has throttled back all of these technologies that actually work. And I want to let people know from my horse's mouth as of this month how well this works. So again, if you're interested, sign up. I can shoot you his testimonial and some other people's, and you can hear from them, not from me, that this stuff is actually pretty darn efficacious. Obviously, if they've got quadriplegics vertical, that sort of speaks to it as well. And then you can get something for transacting with me that is not just a straight donation, because when you do this kind of work with me, I take every bit of profit and I plug it back into saving kids from pedophile networks and allegedly baby raping cops and step grandpas on the sex offender registry and busting brothels across this great planet. So that's where your excess is going, is I'm literally in the brothel. There I am with a girl in a brothel, doing what I think is God's work and what is my highest calling.
Incredible. Incredible. Well, Leigh, thank you again for coming on here. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I always enjoy catching up with you because it's almost like you're like a special forces operator, and we get a chat, and it's like, well, what was your weekend look like? And oh, I just did a mission over in Iraq. Broke up an opium drug trade operation, and you always have these crazy stories, and you did not fail to impress during this interview. So thank you for doing what I'm doing, or doing what you're doing. I encourage anyone that's watching to go to your website, do the bits of homework that we talked about. The real power lies in all of us collectively. It's not in some politician doing something. It's not in Pam Bondi prosecuting Epstein's list. The real power comes on the ground with the people in their communities doing things. That's exactly what you're doing. It's what I'm doing in my way. And I thank you for this. And I appreciate the time that you've given me.
Well, thank you. And I know we were aiming for an hour, and I think we're at the hour and quarter plus a little bit mark, but it was a long story, and I really feel like it was hopefully engaging. And I can't leave any of the crazy out because it really ups the ante on what we need to do to fight back the crazy. So if I go, oh, it's a little kid, she was abused by her dad, please help us. It doesn't really give the full flavor. So thank you for allowing me that extra bit of time to go there, and as well say, hey, if you want to keep me in the fight and you got some arthritis or a blown rotator cuff, or you need some extra oxygen in your system, do a personal shout out on the stuff that keeps me in the saddle, because I don't want to leave this fight and just go do a workaday job. And your audience is what makes the world go round. I was talking to somebody else yesterday, and they're like, it's the podcasters who got this country to the tipping point, to critical mass, that got 90,000 Amish out there. We all went in our little ways and fought down all the evil and the crazy and got our little villages activated, so to speak. And without the microphone, we would be nothing. And if your audience doesn't understand where we are without your microphone, look at the Holocaust. Okay. If MSNBC and Seth Holhouse and everybody in between had been in the middle of Auschwitz at the gas chambers watching Hitler's minions roll Jewish people into the gas chambers, it never would have happened. The problem was the good Germans believed Hitler. They allowed themselves to be cowed and quieted and threatened into not speaking. And the media, it was a different day and age. It wasn't as easy for us with our phones and our cameras to be the media. It was a different day and age, and nobody was up in there rolling video. So we have a unique opportunity given to us by the First Amendment in this country to speak, to gather, and for the media to do this part. And we are the new media. Seth is the new media. CNN, MSNBC, they've been dead on the vine since 2021, and Clay will tell you that. Like, legit, this is the new media. But without that microphone that's in front of that man's mouth and his kindness and letting me on my microphone today, y'all have no idea what's going on. This is a fifth generation war. The new bullets are not bullets. They are informational bullets. And it is incumbent upon us. We are the new guys in the trenches, in the foxholes, at the beachhead of Normandy. We are the 17-year-olds stepping out of the boat. And when you ask, how can I be the hero myself this week? This is it. You go and you ring DeSantis's phone, Attorney John Gard, Attorney General John Gard's phone, and the head of DCF. And like I said, if you have a minute to write a letter to the Judicial Qualifications Commission, that is how you become the heroes that you were meant to be. And you got to ask yourself, is what you are choosing today worth more than what you are letting go of? Choose the thing that's worth more. Okay. This girl needs you. Seth and I need you, not because he and I need you today, but because on behalf of this girl, we need you. And in that way, you are the hero. You are the MLK Jr. You are the General Pattons and MacArthur's. You are the unnamed soldier crawling out of the boat on D-Day in Normandy who fell into a grave and was never transported back to America's shores. You are keeping America free and keeping our children safe. And this is the way you do it this week. Thank you so much for having me, Seth.
Absolutely. Numbers don't lie. The impact that Balance of Nature makes every single day is astounding. You can see the numbers for yourself at their website, balanceofnature.com. So listen to these stats concerning Balance of Nature's worldwide success. More than 1,000 success stories are reported each month. Hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide, millions of orders delivered each year, and billions, yes, billions of fruits and veggie supplements consumed by people who've decided to start living better. There's only one number missing. That's you. Do what I did and add yourself to these numbers. Start taking Balance of Nature's whole food supplements, like so many others around the world. Here's another number that should get your attention: 35%. Use my discount code SETH to get 35% off plus free shipping and their money back guarantee. You must use my discount code SETH. So call them at 800-2468-751 and use the discount code SETH, or order online at balanceofnature.com. Use discount code SETH to get 35% off plus free shipping.